10 signs she's emotionally checked out, but still with you. There is a stage in relationships that most people don't notice until they are already deep inside it. And by the time they realize what is happening, it usually feels confusing, painful, and emotionally draining. Nothing looks completely wrong on the surface, but something inside the connection has already changed in a very subtle way. And this is what makes emotional detachment so difficult to recognize. She's still physically present, still replying to messages, still showing up, still acting like everything is normal. But emotionally, something has shifted underneath the surface. That shift is not loud. It is quiet, gradual, and easy to rationalize in the beginning. And the longer you ignore it, the more you start questioning yourself instead of questioning what is actually happening in front of you. This is how people slowly end up holding onto relationships that are already fading without even realizing how far things have changed. 1. She feels distant even when she is present. She is physically there, but emotionally absent in a way that is hard to fully explain at first. You can sit with her, talk to her, spend time together, and on the surface everything looks normal, but internally you can feel something is missing. The warmth, emotional engagement, curiosity, and presence that used to exist are no longer consistent. She responds when spoken to, but there is no emotional depth behind the responses. It feels like you are interacting with someone who is going through the motions rather than someone who is fully connected to you in that moment. And over time, that feeling becomes more noticeable because emotional presence is not something you can fake for long periods without it becoming obvious in subtle ways. 2. Conversations lose depth and meaning. At the beginning, conversations used to feel alive, natural, and effortless. You could talk for hours about anything, your thoughts, your plans, your goals, your opinions, even random ideas, and it would still feel engaging. There was curiosity on both sides, and the connection felt mentally and emotionally stimulating. But now, conversations feel shorter, more predictable, and surface level. She responds, but without real curiosity or emotional investment. You start noticing that you are the one pushing conversations forward, trying to create energy, trying to revive something that used to happen naturally. And when conversations begin to feel like effort instead of flow, it is often a sign that emotional engagement is no longer at the same level it once was. 3. She stops initiating emotional connection. In the early stages, she used to reach out first, check on you, ask how you're feeling, and show genuine interest in your emotional state. There was a natural balance in communication. But over time, that initiation begins to fade. You become the one carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. You are the one starting deeper conversations, try to reconnect, try to maintain closeness. And when emotional initiation becomes one-sided for too long, it creates a quiet imbalance where one person is investing emotionally while the other is simply responding when necessary. That shift slowly changes the dynamic of the relationship without any obvious moment of change. 4. She becomes less reactive to your presence or absence. When someone is emotionally connected, your presence naturally affects them. They notice when you are around, they feel your absence when you are not, and there is a level of emotional response tied to your presence in their life. But when emotional attachment begins to fade, that reaction weakens. You stop feeling that same excitement when you appear or that same emotional pull when you are gone. Things become more neutral. And neutrality in a relationship is often more concerning than conflict because it shows emotional distance rather than emotional tension. When someone no longer reacts strongly to your presence or absence, it often means your emotional significance in their internal world has reduced. 5. She avoids emotional conversations. When you try to talk about deeper topics, feelings, concerns, direction, or the state of the relationship, she avoids them, deflects them, or responds in a way that feels detached. She may change the subject, downplay the importance, or act like everything is fine without fully engaging in the emotional layer of the conversation. This avoidance is not always intentional or malicious, but it often signals that emotional depth is no longer something she is fully invested in. Because when someone is emotionally connected, they're willing to engage in uncomfortable conversations. When they are not, they avoid emotional intensity altogether. 6. Her energy becomes inconsistent. One of the most confusing signs is inconsistency. Some days she feels warm, responsive, and engaged. Other days she feels distant, cold, or distracted. This emotional inconsistency creates instability for you because you're constantly trying to adjust to different versions of her. You find yourself analyzing patterns, trying to understand what changed, and waiting for the good version of her to return. But inconsistency itself is often a sign that emotional stability in the connection is no longer solid. Because when someone is fully emotionally invested, their energy tends to be more consistent, not unpredictable. 7. She is mentally elsewhere even when she is with you. Even in physical presence, there's a noticeable mental distance. She may be on her phone, distracted, lost in thought, or emotionally disengaged from the moment. You can feel that her attention is not fully anchored in the interaction. And when someone is mentally elsewhere frequently, it means their emotional focus is shifting away from the relationship. It does not always mean they're doing something wrong, but it does indicate that their emotional center is no longer fully aligned with the connection the way it used to be. 8. She stops showing curiosity about your life. Curiosity is one of the strongest signs of emotional interest. When someone is invested in you, they naturally want to know more about your thoughts, your goals, your experiences, and your perspective. But when emotional attachment decreases, curiosity fades with it. Conversations about your life become less frequent, less detailed, and less engaging. You start noticing that she no longer asks the same types of questions or shows the same level of interest in your personal world. And when curiosity disappears, emotional connection often follows shortly after, because curiosity is what keeps people mentally and emotionally engaged. 9. You feel like you're the only one trying. At this stage, the imbalance becomes more visible. You are the one initiating conversations, trying to fix issues, maintaining communication, and keeping the relationship alive. You start feeling like the emotional responsibility of the relationship is on your shoulders alone. And while relationships naturally go through phases of imbalance, long-term one-sided effort creates emotional exhaustion. Because when one person is consistently trying harder than the other, it stops feeling like a partnership and starts feeling like maintenance of something that is slowly fading. 10. You feel it, but you ignore it. Before all the signs become clear, there is always a feeling. Something feels different. Something feels slightly off. The energy is not the same as it used to be. But instead of trusting that internal signal, you begin to question it. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that it is just a phase, that things will eventually return to normal. But intuition is rarely loud. It is subtle, consistent, and persistent. And when you ignore it repeatedly, you begin to disconnect from your own awareness. You start prioritizing hope over observation, and that is where confusion grows. Because deep down, you already know something has changed, but accepting it requires emotional adjustment. And that is what most people resist. At the end of the day, emotional detachment does not usually come with dramatic endings or obvious conflict. It often comes quietly through distance, inconsistency, reduced emotional presence, and subtle changes in behavior that build up over time. And once you learn to recognize these patterns early, you stop investing deeper into confusion and start protecting your emotional energy instead of losing it in uncertainty. Because real emotional connection does not leave you constantly questioning where you stand. It brings clarity, consistency, and emotional stability. And anything that keeps you in long-term confusion is already showing you what it is, if you're willing to see it clearly without emotional distortion.
Follow for more if you want to understand women better.